The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, hey everyone, my name is Kai and I am here to present to you today the first inaugural PopcornFX webinar entitled Eye-Popping PopcornFX. We're going to cover a lot of things today. Basically, any questions that you have about PopcornFX, you can feel free to ask those at any time. Put those in the questions section of your GoToWebinar panel there, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar where I'll go and answer all those questions for you there. So any of, if you have any questions about any of the Popcorn Library Effects 40, the super tools or anything like that, I can probably answer those for you. I'm still a little new to this myself, so I don't really know everything at this point, but we can kind of explore together. I have a pretty good handle on it, and hopefully we can resolve your problem as well. So welcome to all my EU friends. This webinar is specifically for the European Union over there for your time frame. Like I mentioned, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be also recording this webinar. So if you go too fast at any point for you guys, you can always review this webinar. We're going to be sending you out an email, and you can review that, the video link at your own time. We're going to be recording everything we're doing here. And in addition, we're also going to be sending out a survey. So if you have any feedback, any questions or anything like that, or any suggestions, I guess, you can put your questions in the questions panel. Any suggestions, you can put those in your survey for future topics or anything like that, and we'll consider those for future webinars. All right, I have a little bit of a cold myself here, so apologies if I sound like a frog or something like that, but we're going to just work with it. So, okay, we're going to get started right off the bat here. Like I mentioned, any questions, put them in the questions panel, and we'll get to those a little bit later on. Okay, so we're going to be going through a couple of topics. I'm not going to be really doing any PowerPoint stuff in this webinar here. We're going to be looking at a couple of topics, starting off with a lot of the learning resources stuff. Now, if you go to your Set tab up here, and you go into props, or rather particles, I'm just going to briefly explain the folder structure here in case some of you don't have all these folders or you haven't purchased all this stuff yet. We have the with the PopcornFX plugin. Once you purchase that, you'll get these PopcornFX super tools right here in this folder, Distortion Emitter and everything like that. And this PopcornFX Library 40 is available for separate purchase. Okay, so this is from the content store, and I can provide you a link with that later. We're going to be using a couple of these in our final project, which I'll show you in just a moment. And in addition to that, we have the PopcornFX learning samples, which are also available for separate purchase. And I believe they'll be sending out a promo for the PopcornFX learning samples as well with the webinar. Okay. So the PopcornFX learning samples did come for free as an early bird special with the PopcornFX plugin, but I believe now they're for a purchase of a small fee or something like that. And I think with this webinar, you'll get a coupon for these as well. If not, we'll be providing a $10 gift certificate for the content store, and you can use that towards that as well. Okay, so let's get started right off the bat here. The project we're going to be kind of working through today, working to eventually, is the one you see on the screen right here. I'm going to play this back really quick. Excuse me. Now, apologies if with this PopcornFX stuff, there's a lot of stuff going on the screen. So during the webinar, it may seem a little bit choppy. Okay, so you may have a little bit of lag since we're broadcasting to quite a few people here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and play this back. Now there is sound as well, but we won't have sound in this webinar. So we have a gun kind of just shooting off. We have an explosion, flaming cars, flaming wreckage, and all this stuff, and then we have a scene with fog and everything. Okay, so that's about it. Now, a couple of cool things to notice here as well is when we're shooting this machine gun, it's actually hitting the wall over here and creating like bullet holes basically in the wall. And we'll talk about how to do that later. It's one of the cooler things that we're going to talk about as we work our way through this. Okay, but I'm going to start off with the basics first. So we're going to go ahead and start a new project. Okay, we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of learning samples here. So the PopcornFX learning samples, I'm going to go into the functions folder here and into particle settings, and then we're going to go down here to Sprite animation sequence, okay? Sprite and sequence. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and load that in. Now, understanding Sprite Atlases is an essential part of finding out figuring out all the different effects later on. So I'm going to start with the Sprite Atlases because this is an essential learning point that we need to figure out before we move on to more complex types of particles. Okay, so if you have the learning samples, you can follow along by going to the particle settings and loading up this Sprite animation sequence. Okay, and make sure you go to your PopcornFX tab in the right-hand side there. A bunch of different values here. The first value we're going to take a look at here, first of all, let's go ahead and simulate this. So if I press Shift S, you can also use this option up here. It's really handy to know the Shift S hotkey though. So I'm going to be using the Shift S hotkey throughout this webinar, just like this. And let's zoom in a little bit closer. Okay, so we kind of have a dude just kind of crossing the road, moving left to right, excuse me, and disappearing. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is I'm just going to be deconstructing this for you and showing you how it works. So let's just go into end the simulation here. Now, we're not going to be talking about this emitter section right now. We actually have a tutorial that's coming out later this week that talks about all these different things, color map on mesh, color map lifetime, and texture for emission and all that stuff. But we're going to be going down right now to the particle section right here. So this dictates what the particle actually is. What the particle actually is all dictated in the particle section. So you have a resource list here, and this may seem a little bit intimidating at first, but if you go through it one by one, you can kind of clear it up. You need to also look at the particle mode section here as well. Okay, so pay attention specifically to the blend mode, which is set to additive, and we also have this box checked, which is use 8x4 Sprite Atlas. Now, the Sprite Atlas is what we're going to be talking about right now. So the first thing you need to know is blend mode is additive. So there's a number of different things down here. Okay, so this is just a texture emitter right now. We're just emitting a texture. It's not a mesh or anything like that. So we have a number of different items here in the resource list. The first one is this additive one. Now, if you have this selected, use 8x4 Sprite Atlas, anything with 1 at the end is not going to be used. Okay, we're going to be using the 32. Since 8 times 4 is 32, it's kind of an indicator as to what it is. So if we have additive selected, we need to go to additive, and we have this selected, we need to go to 32. So this is the Sprite Atlas, or the Sprite sheet, whatever you want to call it, that we're using. Okay, and if you go down here, alpha blend, there's alpha blend 1, alpha blend 32. If I change this to alpha blend, and I still have this maintained, we're going to be using this Sprite sheet, which if you can look closely is just a couple of numbers. So let's press Shift S to simulate this. So a couple of numbers just going across like that. Okay, so there's 3 options here. Now, another thing to keep in mind here is the lit. If you have lit on the right-hand side here and unlit, lit means it's like self-illuminated, okay? Unlit means it's not self-illuminated. So if we go to alpha blend unlit and Shift S, it's going to look the same in this case because the letters are blue in the first place. But other types of textures, you may have stuff that you need to actually light up. We do have lights in this scene, but just keep that in mind. Unlit is, you need scene lighting to light it up. But we're going to go back to additive because this is the Sprite sheet that I wanted to take a look at here. Now you can actually load this up in Photoshop. Okay, so you can just go ahead and use this launch button to launch it in Photoshop. We'll take a closer look at what exactly the Sprite Atlas is. I'm also going to load up a project, or not a project here, a folder with the PopcornFX Sprite PSD template. And you should get this as well with the plugin. Okay, so if you don't get this PSD template, you can just email me and I can actually just send it to you. It's just a couple of Photoshop templates here. And we'll talk about these a little bit later on. Okay, so you can't really make it out right now because there's a transparent background. But what we can do is we can just create a new layer here and fill it with black. I have black selected. Just move that layer down. Okay, so what we have is we have 4 sprites going down, and we have 8 sprites going across. So that's the 4 by 8, okay? Now, it doesn't really matter the size of your Sprite Atlas. You can have images of any size. the thing that matters is iClone is going to separate them into 4 sections or 8 sections, horizontally and vertically. Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll explore a couple of other Sprite Atlases as we move along through our project here, but this is the one I'm going to show you right now. So you can see what happens is it goes down. Okay, so it goes from the top left and it goes down, and then it moves to the next column, down this way, and then to the next column. So basically they're all the same, so it's just repeating the same thing, okay, over and over and over again. You can have a single sprite, a single line here. If you have a single line, then if you go over to your iClone tab here, you can just change your sprite max to 1 instead of 8, okay? Excuse me, if you change your sprite max to 1 instead of 8, then it's only going to be using the first column. So sprite max is important to recognize as well, okay? And sprite mode is animation sequence. Okay, so what it's going to be doing is it's going to be going through the sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. If you have random selected, okay, it's just going to choose a random line and display that. So if I shift S now, you can see it'll just choose a random line and it'll display that throughout the entire scene. We'll see a better example of that in our next example, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. Okay, and we choose animation sequence. And align mode is set to vertical. Now align mode you can set to whatever you want. You can set it to face the camera. If I shift S to simulate this and we rotate around, you can see it's pretty much just facing the camera, okay? No matter where we go here, except that the direction may be changing a little bit based on where our camera orientation is. And that's just the way that this sprite is set up here. All right, and you can change the align mode to whatever else, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's a good introduction to the Sprite Atlas, okay? And that's all I really wanted to talk about. If you have any further questions about the Sprite Atlas, feel free to put those in the questions panel. Let's take a look at a bit more of a complex example of the Sprite Atlas. Not really more complex, but just different. We'll find that in the applications folder here under texture emitter. We'll have a kind of a matrix digital rain text, okay? So I'm going to delete the original one here, this function, and we're just going to load in this digital rain. And if you want, you can press Control, Shift, and P to open up your project settings. It's Control, Shift, and P, and go down here to change your background color to something maybe a bit more black, okay? Since we're going to have the matrix text coming down here. Okay, so let's go ahead and simulate this. Shift S to simulate, whoops, not save. Shift S to simulate, Control S to save. And what's going to happen is we will have lines of weird zeros and ones coming down, okay? Now they're not the matrix symbols or whatever they are in the matrix, but we've just kind of substituted them with binary code here. Okay, so if I go over to PopcornFX tab right now, and let's take a look. So we have additive blend mode, okay? We have use Sprite Atlas, and we're using all 32 sprites, okay? So we're using all 32 sprites, and we also have an animation sequence, okay? So let's take a look at exactly what this sprite sheet consists of, or this Sprite Atlas consists of. So let's open up our diffuse map right there. Okay, so you can see this one, obviously the size is very different. Okay, so if we went to full size, you can see it's only 33% of the size image size right now. The other one was 66%. But we do have 4 rows, and we have 8 columns across. And each column and each row has a different, set of numbers in random order. That's why it keeps fluctuating. That's why it keeps on going, from one to the other. And again, if we have animation sequence, it's going to, roll through all of those columns one by one. If we change this to random, it's going to choose one random sprite, okay, and just display that sprite throughout the entire duration of its lifetime. So you can see now they're not kind of flicking back and forth between different numbers. So now it's just one row, one number that comes down like this, which isn't very true to the matrix. So obviously we want to, choose to animation sequence, and there you go. Now they're kind of fluctuating back and forth. Okay, okay, excuse me. So that's a good example of, the sprite list and, or sprite list rather, Sprite Atlas. I keep on getting those mixed up. And that's the basics for understanding a lot of what we're going to get into in just a moment here. Okay, and the template can be found if you go into texture here, there's this walk sprite template, okay? So you'll get this Popcorn PSD template. You can just get it through the plugin, or you can email me. I believe it's just free of charge. If not, just I'll give it to you anyways. All right. So this sprite sheet right here is a PSD template, and so you can see the same thing that we had before. Okay, very similar to this. But obviously, when you save it out, you want to make sure that your black background is invisible. Okay. You want to make sure that you save it out as a PNG, and you want to make sure that your black background is invisible. And we set up, different rows for you here and everything like that. So, okay, and you can replace these images with whatever you want, like a smiley face, frown face, neutral face, and crying face, or something like that. And you can use as many columns or as many rows as you would like. But just remember, the order goes from top left down and to the next column, and so on and so forth. All right. I don't want to spend too much more time explaining these Sprite Atlases, so let's move on to our next example here, which is, okay, we'll just close this. We'll start a new project now from this point. We're going to talk about ribbons, okay? Cool ribbon stuff, all right? So for ribbons, I'm going to go through a couple of examples here. Ribbons tend to be the more kind of complex particle effects, which you can do a lot of cool stuff with them, though. I'm going to go to Applications and Ribbon Emitter. And we're going to take a look at a very simple one, this ghost one. Probably should have kept the background black for this. Again, Control-Shift-P to open up the project settings. Since we have ghosts now, it's not too creepy with a gray background. Let's just Shift-S to simulate this. All right, so it's probably moving pretty fast for you guys because these ghosts are really going at a high pace. But I'm just going to deconstruct this for you. Okay, so there's a bunch of ribbons just kind of going around like this. And the ribbons are in the shape of ghosts. Let's go take a look at what we're looking at now. So this one's a little bit simpler. So we're just using blend mode additive again. We're not using the Sprite Atlas. So this is deselected. And so that means we're going to be choosing the 1. All right. Now this ribbon emitters, excuse me, have a 4x1 Sprite Atlas as opposed to 8x4. Okay. And we'll just take a look at what that is. And if you go over here to additive 4, we'll just load this in Photoshop. So this is the template for ribbons. We also have a template in the PSD templates over here as well. Okay, so there's ribbon and there's ribbon 4x1. So this one right here, 4x1. Okay, and you can put as many shapes as you want in each column, and they'll just kind of display as ribbons. So, okay, and then the additive one, all we see is just a ghost. So if you launch that map right there, it's just an upside down ghost, and we're just shooting off, creepy looking ghost things like this with the mouth and the eyes and everything. That's a really easy example of a ribbon. Let's take a look now at a different example. I'm going to load a custom project here. These fish. Okay, so we have this fish, and you can also find these fish, this fish ribbon effect in the content tab under set, and I believe it's in under ribbon emitter. Yeah, it's down here, School of Fish. Okay, so in your applications under ribbon emitter, you can find the School of Fish, which is exactly what I'm using right now, except I just loaded a project with a custom ocean background, which looks kind of cool. And I can send you this ocean background image if you want later as well. So let's just select our emitter here, go to our scene manager under particle, and we'll find our ribbon emitter, and Shift S to simulate. All right, so you can see we have some fish just swirling about in a kind of a cool pattern. All right. Now, believe it or not, this is a ribbon emitter, and all those fish are kind of just separate parts of a single ribbon. So if we go to our particle effects tab over here, let's take a look at what we're dealing with. So down here, let's just, you can see it goes on and on and on and on for a long time. They have a long lifetime for this stream of fish. All right, so pretty cool stuff. Let's Shift S to end that simulation. It's kind of distracting. Let's take a look at what we're dealing with here. So let's deconstruct this. So we're using alpha blend this time, alpha blend mode. So we're using this one right here. You can see we have a normal map, base color map, and a metallic and roughness map for our fish. All right. If I load this up in Photoshop, just a picture of a fish. Right. Nothing too complicated. We have a normal map which adds a little bit of texture onto it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. If I decided to change this from alpha blend to additive, we're going to just be using this one right here, okay? Just a circle. And if we shift S to simulate that, now we're shooting off like circles, all right? So these are just kind of floating circles. And the reason they're kind of flapping, it looks like they're flapping. I'm not sure if you can tell on the webinar here with the lag and everything. The reason it seems like they're flapping is because we have turbulence on the ribbon as well. All right, so there's a number of different options here. Let's try to use the Sprite Atlas. So the 4x1 Sprite Atlas is this one right here. We changed to additive. Okay, we're using this one, which is a bunch of different colors. All right, so if you don't have an image, then it'll look like this. Now, the reason they're kind of separated into little fishy parts, I guess you can say, let's go back to our fish actually. Let's take off that. Additive, oh, now alpha blend. All right, so now we're back at fish. Let's take a look at the values which we can modify down here at the bottom here. So there's a ribbon settings. Under particle settings, there's a ribbon settings section. All right, there's spin speed is going to be a good indicator of, so if you increase the spin speed to like 1.63, now it looks like they're just a bunch of, ribbons put together like this, okay? So now you can see where the ribbon comes in. Just gonna try and get a good view here. Okay, so now it looks like they're just ribbons. It doesn't look like they're separate fish anymore. And you can, increase all these values here. I'm not gonna worry too much about them, but ribbon turbulence is one that makes it seem like they're flapping their tails. Okay, so if I take the spin speed down again, suddenly our fishes will once again appear. And if I zoom in really close, you can see it looks like they're kind of flapping their tails. Again, I'm not sure if this translates well with the lag on the GoToWebinar, but there you go. And if you want their tails to stop flapping, maybe they're just gliding through somehow, then you can take your ribbon turbulence down. So now you can see they're not even moving their tails at all. If you increase the ribbon turbulence, we can see them kind of, flapping a lot more. Okay, I'm not sure if the word is flapping or swimming, whatever you want to call it. And there's also ribbon length as well, okay? So increase the ribbon length, you can see what's going to happen. We get all messed up there. So ribbon length, again, you can make them more like eels, or you can make them more like little flounders by adjusting the ribbon length, okay? And let's just kind of bring that, I think, wherever it was at. I can't remember the value. Bring that turbulence down a little bit there as well. And if you want to adjust the, the path of your ribbon, there's a couple things that you can adjust here. The emit volume and direction as well. So right now we're emitting, 200 on the X, Y, and Z axis. So it's kind of just a big circle, okay, X, Y, and Z. If you want it to be, larger on the Y-axis, put 500, and we'll see a slight difference in the shape here. Slowly forming, it'll kind of be more oval-like. Okay, we're not going to worry too much about emit volume because it takes a while to see the effect. Now there's another option down here called random direction from center, and if you deactivate this, or if you activate this, what's going to happen is you can see now they're going to just kind of float about in all sorts of different directions. They're not going to be in a random, they're not going to be in a more organized school of fish fashion. So now they're kind of just going off on their own like random direction. Okay, so you can deactivate that and they'll go back into the school of fish mode. You can also increase the life minimum and maximum as well. The radius increment is going to dictate how tight the circle is, okay? So you can really kind of adjust this a lot, and the radius increment fade. So you can really just kind of mess around with the various shapes of the school of fish here as well using that. And if you choose trail movement, down here there's an option for linear polarization as well. So if you choose linear polarization, they'll just kind of go in a line. Let's take that turbulence down as well. They're flapping a little too much. Okay, there you go. So, I mean, basically these all kind of dictate just the types of directions and stuff that the fish are going in. You can just follow. You select follow. They'll just kind of follow in a straight line like this, which is pretty cool as well. Okay, now I'm not going to spend too much time messing around with this because we have other more interesting stuff to get to. All right, so if you have any questions about that later, just feel free to ask me. There's initial speed and a bunch of other stuff as well. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to load in our final project. Actually, I'm going to start the final project from scratch because you can just follow along. That's the project I had at the beginning here. So if you want to load up that project, you can go to your Content tab. Under your stage, we've had this in iClone for ages. Under Mesh Medium, we have this flooded kind of project right here, this stage. And as you can see, if I zoom out, this comes embedded with iClone, so all of you will have this. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out the water for now. Rather, you know what, I'm going to keep this water. No, I'm going to delete this water. And we're going to just load in our own water. Okay, so this is what the project looks like normally. And we're going to load in our own water because I'm going to show you from scratch again. And I think our project's background is set to an image. So, okay, yeah, there we go. Let's deactivate the image for our project background. So you can activate an image if you want this to be the lost city of Atlantis, for example. You can have it under the ocean right there by activating this image. I'm going to just deactivate that. Excuse me. I'm going to load in a sky. So content. Under set here, under sky, you should have a number of different skies embedded with iClone. I'm going to use this sky 03, which is kind of a cool looking thunder sky, or maybe we'll add a little bit more color to it right here, the sunset. Yeah, this one will do. Or you can even have sunset or what have you. All right, we'll just work with this one for now. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to just load in some water because I wanted to show you a little bit of distortion. Okay, so let's go to the water section here. I'm just going to load in underwater. I'm just going to load in a gentle wave. Let's go ahead with that one. And you can see it'll flood the entire map. All right, so all we need to do is take the water direction down under height over here, change it to the maybe minus 50 instead of plus 50, and there we have, you know, kind of a river area over here. All right, now we're going to talk about distortion. So distortion is used most commonly in a lot of cases to create water ripples and stuff like that. Let's play back here. Oops, I have a camera for some reason. Change to our preview camera here. Take a closer look at the water. Right, so we got a nice reflection off the sky and everything. And if I play back, okay, you can see the water ripples and distortion. Okay, so that's, you know, that's one way. Now the way that this is achieved is, well, there's our fish. The fish are still there. Hey, there we go. Let's delete those fish since we don't want them climbing above the land. I probably should have started a new project. There we go. Let's delete this bad boy. Let's delete that camera as well. Okay, so that's one way to create ripples in your scene. Let's make our light invisible there. Another way is, so let's take a look at the water, closer look at the water. Now the water ripples are actually created by a bump map right here, and it's actually a video. So it's just kind of a video of a normal map, just kind of, you know, flowing and ebbing and flowing and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and delete that. If we select it and delete it, and then we play back, you can see there's no water movement at all. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create a distortion on this water. I need something to select here so I can move my camera properly. I'm just going to add a prop into the scene here really quick, guys, just so I can have something to move my camera around. Let's just have a ball here. Okay, now we can rotate around this ball. Okay, so the water here is what we're going to be focusing on. I want to change a couple properties of this water here. To make it a bit more transparent, since we want to see the distortion on the surface below the water. So let's go to with the water selected. There's a couple of values down here. Above surface strength, there's refraction and reflection. Let's just change the above surface strength, underwater strength, refraction here. We don't want underwater fog. Okay, so make sure you have underwater fog off. So now we can kind of see the rocks below the surface. Okay, and that's exactly what we want. Now, there's still quite a strong reflection on top of the water there, so we can just, above surface strength, take that down if we want, or increase that. Maybe something like this will do. Okay, so we can actually see the plant life and stuff underneath, but we still do want, some reflection on the surface. Okay, underwater strength, just minimize that. Okay, but again, so what we want to do is we want to create distortion on this water to simulate waves. So what I'm going to do is go to my content tab here, and we're going to minimize the props for now. And under Distortion Emitter right here, Applications, Distortion Emitter, we have a couple of different options. We have the ripples, and I can show you a project with the ripple later on if you want. But we're going to deal with the water wave, okay? Because the water wave is just basically a number of distortions combined, or a number of ripples combined together. Where did I put that? Where did you go? Oh, here it is. Okay. You can press the W hotkey to show the gizmo, the movement gizmo, so you can find out where your emitter is. So I'm going to place this right at the water level. Okay. I'm actually going to decrease the water level a bit, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Minus 80. Okay. And we'll bring our gizmo down. So it's kind of just entering the water, just halfway through the water like this. So let's go ahead and press Shift S to simulate this. Okay, so what we can see now is we can see the water, the waves. We can also see through the water. So we can see at the bottom, everything distorting. Okay, so that's the cool thing about PopcornFX is kind of the distortion effect. It's good. You can use it for fires if you're peering through a fire, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But you can see here that we're seeing the ripples are distorting the ground beneath the water surface. Okay, so that's the effect that you want to go for. And you want to make sure that you have a couple options here selected. The first one is you want to make sure that, where is it here? Under, is it basic attributes? Yeah. So basic attributes, we currently have it set as face cam. Now, if you want the distortion to be along the surface, I'd recommend using, see right now, if you take a look at the top left there, it's actually distorting the land mass too. So that's something that we don't want, obviously. And that's because we have face cam selected. If we change this to horizontal, what's going to happen is it's only going to emit horizontally along the surface of the emitter. So along the X and Y axis, which is the red and green arrows right here of your emitter, okay? So that's how you can, have it only affect the water and not affect the land above the water there. Okay, and there's all kinds of options you can change here. I'm not going to get into too much detail on the distortion. All you really need to know here is how this distortion is achieved. We have emit volume at 4,000 by 4,000. So what this is it's a 4,000 unit radius around this little dummy here, and that's where these distortions are emitting. And believe it or not, it's just multiple distortions. We're emitting distortions at a rate of 3,000, okay? And the quota is 10,000. So we have 3,000 distortions emitting at once. And that's what's creating the effect of the waves. Okay, so basically 3,000 of those little ripples that I showed you earlier. Although the ripples, they're not like circular ripples, they're kind of just random, circular, weird, chaotic distortions like this, which you can see in the diffuse map. Okay, if we take a look at it, we can launch that up. Notice this one is very different. It's not circular like a ripple would be. Okay, and if we have time later, I'll talk more about the ripple one. But I want to move on to the cool stuff really, which is the scene that we're going to talk about right now. I no longer need you, Sphere. All right, I'll take him out of the scene. Now, one thing I want to do with this scene first is I want to change everything from terrain to props, because you may notice that we don't have any props in the scene, only our shadow catcher, and everything in this scene is actually set as a part of the terrain. So, if you want to change these to props in your scene, all you got to do is click on the terrain option here, or the terrain item, and you can see it'll select everything, and then you can just right-click on the scene and convert to prop, and that'll convert everything to a prop. Actually, I probably should have kept that sphere because we want to use that sphere as a scene dummy. All right, and I'll tell you what I mean in just a moment here. So you can see we have so many props here, but I want all these props to be part of a hierarchy, so it's easier to kind of see in our scene manager. So I'm sorry I left you there, Sphere. Let's bring him back into the scene here, and we'll use him as a scene dummy. Where did I find that? 3D blocks? Yeah, 3D blocks. Okay. All right, so there's our sphere. All right, so what we're going to do is select everything in our props except for that ball 000. We're going to control select that to make it deselected, and we're going to just attach everything to that sphere. All right, because what we can do then is we can just go blink, and our scene manager is a lot more organized. Let's call this scene dummy. Oops. Okay, we can just make it invisible. Or we can't use this because that'll make everything invisible. So we got to use this one up here, this visibility option right here, just to make the sphere invisible by itself. Okay, now that we got the scene set up, not really part of PopcornFX, but hopefully a little tip there for you. Let's go to our content tab, and I'm going to be using an item from a pack that was created by one of our developers, Adolfo Navarro. So it's a really cool pack, UN Task Force it's called. I can send you the link later if you want, just you can request that in the questions section. I'm going to just bring in this gray Humvee and place it right over here. And the reason I'm using this is because this Humvee has a machine gun on top of it, which is pretty cool. And we can fire this machine gun off into the building beside it. Okay, so you can see at the top there we have, I don't know, that's maybe a 50 caliber gun or something. Maybe someone who's more familiar with guns can tell me. And we're going to be shooting at this door. Okay, so say we're in like a war zone and we want to just shoot at this door over here. So let's align it right to the door. It's a little bit too far. There we go. We'll just work with that. All right, we got this pile of garbage beside us. Okay, so the cool thing we can do with this one, let's just, we're not going to move it, so let's just close that physics toolbox option there. Let's select the gun here. Press the Q hotkey and then select the gun right here. Right click on the gun and go to script and fire machine gun. Okay, so it has a little bit of smoke coming out and just that fire coming out from the, now it has actual sound, but again, I don't have speakers at the moment, so you'll just have to trust me. You can load the project yourself. I'm gonna be sending you this project as part of the webinar experience. You can kind of experiment with it on your own time. Now we are going to be using certain elements in this project that are, part of the library 40 and part of the super tools and stuff. So if you don't have those content packs, then you're going to come up with a watermark. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But you will be able to see the project and mess around with it, but it will have a watermark, so you won't be able to render it out. Okay, unfortunately. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is now the mesh emitter. So we have this machine gun firing. If I scrub my timeline back and forth, you can see blah, 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 blah. Okay, pretty cool, but we don't have any bullet shells coming out of there. So let's actually make this a bit more real, and let's add some bullet shells. So I'm going to go to my set tab here under particles, and we're going to use a super tool. Super tools, mesh emitter. Let's just bring it over here. It doesn't really matter where your mesh emitter is on the scene because you can just attach it to whatever or use whatever mesh on the scene you want. And I need to find the bullet, which I can find under props. I saved this earlier. We have some shell casings, and you can find this in the marketplace. I'll show you really quick where. I just typed in shell, I think, in the marketplace search, and it came up with some bullet shells. Yeah, these ones right here. Okay, so you can choose your choice of shell right here. All right, and let's go ahead and just bring this larger looking one in here. All right, excuse me. So it looks pretty small. We can resize it if we want using the R hotkey, make it a little bit bigger for us. All right, bring it over here. Take a better look at it. Let me get a closer look at you. All right, so there's our bullet shell. That's our mesh. All right, so for the mesh emitter, we actually need to bring the mesh emitter over here because we're actually going to be emitting from this point. You can use mesh offset or emission offset if you want, but I just find it easier just to place it right here and we'll just kind of emit from this point. So, okay, excuse me. Shift S to simulate. So obviously we don't want random shapes coming out of our emitter here. But first let's focus on changing the direction. We want them to come out on the left-hand side. So let's go to our PopcornFX tab, and we want them to come, let's see, negative Y, so facing the other direction. The Y arrow is facing, so over here. Excuse me. Okay, so just like this. Obviously we don't want that many. Maybe we'll emit at a rate of 5 or something like that. Okay, so just imagine those are bullets coming out as opposed to shapes. And maybe we can have some lower initial speed. Okay, we want to get to the point so they're kind of falling on the side of the tank here, or the Humvee, because we're going to have them bounce off the side of the Humvee. Since they are meshes, we'll work with that. Okay, good enough for me. All right, so now we have the direction and everything all set up okay. What I'm going to do now is change the actual mesh. So let's Shift S to end that simulation. I said end the simulation. There we go. Okay, and what we need to do now is set the mesh. So right here we have a mesh sampler. It's currently set to default mesh, which is the shapes that we have. Let's change this to our little bullet, our casing here. Okay. Now if we Shift S, oops, we need to actually go down here first to use mesh sampler. All right, make sure you have that selected. Oh, wrong one, sorry. We need to go down here. That's for something else. I always get these mixed up. Okay, just garbage that. Excuse me, don't deal with this stuff up here. Don't use the mesh sampler. You need to go down here and replace the mesh down here. Okay, so under particle section, yes, replace the mesh and choose that for the mesh. Okay, it'll come up with the base color and everything. And now we can Shift S, and we need to make sure we're using the right one. So color mesh 1. Oh, mesh max 1. All right, now we're shooting off the bullets. However, the bullets are green and they're quite small. So there's a couple things we need to adjust here really quick. Okay, and one of those is we need to go down to lifetime under particle settings and change all these start colors to white. Okay, when you do that, it's going to be using the neutral color of your base color on the mesh there. So you don't want to have any lifetime colors like this, right? So now we have these shooting out. Let's give it maybe a bit of a faster, or maybe emit a few more here, maybe 6. Okay, and we'll also just keep the spread a little bit. Okay, you can have the spread a little bit more, but that's fine. And initial rotation as well. Down here under rotation. So we're not going to go forward to velocity. Okay, we're just going to kind of keep them to the side, and we need to change the direction of the rotation. We can probably do that on the, nope, not the x-axis. I'm just going to randomly choose an axis until I get it right here. All right, so now they're coming out to the side. So it's about 45 degrees on the y-axis there. Okay, so now you can see they're coming out to the side like this. We can move it up a little bit, so it's kind of maybe coming out here of wherever the bullets are supposed to come out of. I'm not a professional with guns here. It's just there we go. I think that should be fine. And our direction, I want to make it a little bit further back as well on the x-axis. Maybe something like this. All right, we'll work with that. Okay, so we successfully had these bullets come out. Let's also increase the global scale a little bit. Just so under basic attributes here, the global scale, we'll kind of increase that to a little bit have a larger of a bullet size. Now, when you increase the global scale, you have to keep in mind that when you do increase the global scale, all the other values will be enhanced as well, okay? And you'll see that the speed will get a little bit faster, the size will get a little bit larger, and the bullets will go a little bit further. I'm actually going to just change off turn our spread ratio to 0 here. So we have a more uniform, okay. So they're coming out in a more uniform fashion there. Okay, so next item of business there, I spent too long on that. Next item of business is to change our Humvee here, enable the physics on our Humvee body. So the way I can do that is I can just press the Q hotkey and select our Humvee body right here. And I want to activate physics and rigid body. It's going to take just a second to process that. And it should come up with an option here for us to, yeah, okay, so that's fine. So right now we'll just use a frozen, or let's just use static rigid body, and let's simulate that one more time. Okay, so now you see they're bouncing off the edge of our Humvee there. Okay, so they're kind of just bouncing off like this. If you want a more, a closer, you can see it. If you take a close look, it's kind of not really there, but if you want it to be more realistic, you can probably use the self mesh for your Humvee. So instead of using the rigid body bound type box, you can use self mesh. That'll be a more detailed mesh for your physics reaction. And then if I just simulate that, you can see it'll go further down. Okay, now it's bouncing off there. Okay, so we have the bullets coming out. Now we want these bullets to be emitting at a certain point. So what we're going to do is select our emitter, mesh emitter right here, and go to PopcornFX tab. They're emitting right from the front, right from the beginning. So we'll have emit on, but as soon as we stop firing, we want to put emit off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, okay, so they stop right there. So let's actually go to a little bit before that and turn the emission off. So what's going to happen now is we're going to have it firing. Those bullet shells are coming out, and then they stop. Okay, so emit on and emit off. You can keyframe it. All right, let's just make our mesh emitter invisible there. Okay, so that's having the bullets coming out of the gun. There's another cool option here, which is we have an option for firearm. So under the, this is a, I believe it's in the applications. Oh no, this one's in the library 40. Okay, so this is one of the ones in the library 40, weapons and explosives. All right, so we have this firearm one, which is pretty cool. I'm going to bring this in. So this one actually shoots out physics bullets. Okay, this is a really cool effect that I find that you can actually use for any kind of war scene. Okay, so let's put it over here. We need to put it right at the barrel of the gun. They will emit from the bottom of this dummy, so right about here. Okay, and I believe they emit on the negative y-axis. You can always change that, but let's take a look at this one. Shift S to simulate. Okay, so you can see we're shooting off bullets over in this direction. Now again, this is really fast, so hopefully you can see some bullets with the lag and everything like that. But what I'm going to do is we're just going to change our bullet direction, a random direction this to like maybe 0.1. So they're not so far off in every direction. The spread isn't so great. We can use the E hotkey to rotate our dummy, and we want to rotate it 90 degrees. Make sure we have 90 on the z-axis here. All right, so now we're shooting into this building, but it seems like the bullets are going right through the building, which isn't cool because that's not very realistic. So what we want to do is we want to change this building and give this building a physics property. Let's press the Q, and this is part of the reason why I turned everything in the scene to props as well, is because you can't change terrain to physics. So we need to select this building right here, go to physics, activate physics on the building, and let's just use the static mesh, and we can use self mesh for this one as well. Okay, and then what's going to happen is let's select our simulator, and boom. So now you can see that it's creating actual bullet holes in the wall there. So to me, this is one of the coolest effects. I think that you can, it's a really cool effect to have, where you can actually hit objects in your scene and create debris coming from the bullet holes and everything. It's a lot more realistic. Okay, so we're shooting, and there's actual smoke and dust coming out from the bullet holes as well. Pretty cool stuff. I think that's one of my favorite particle effects personally, because I just can find so many uses for it. All right, so that's what that does. Again, let's make our emitter there invisible. Firearm emitter invisible. Okay, now we have some fun stuff. We're going to create an explosion, but I'm going to just experiment with a couple of other particle effects before we move on here as well. This debris of this burnt out car beside our Humvee, I'm going to select that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply another particle effect to that called burning flame. Okay, so this is a very low-key kind of flame that's been burning for a while. You can use this in a variety of situations, but I'm just going to go ahead and apply it to this car here. Okay, so PopcornFX tab over here. What you want to do is it's fairly simple. Just select your mesh. I'm going to select this target right here, which is it's called Sphere 476, but it's actually the car. We'll probably rename that at some point. But if you Shift S to simulate, oops, where are we here? Did we select the right thing? Oh, I might have frozen my. No, don't tell me iClone froze. It froze. All right, so I have to start this up again, and I'll show you the final project. And we'll kind of just deconstruct the final project. I'm not sure why that froze at that point, but yeah, something to pass on to the tech team, to the Q&A team. Maybe we'll have to send them that project. You can restore with your unsaved changes, so maybe I'll just try that instead. Can't even breathe through my nose at this point. All right, so apologies for sounding like a weirdo. Yeah, so we'll just wait for this to load up. And basically what I just did there is you can apply that emitter to that mesh, and it'll create kind of like a low-key, oh, okay. We didn't restore exactly the way we want it to. All right, it's never happened before. Let's just load up that other project. Luckily I have it saved. Okay, a little bit of a fail on the restore there. Oh, it's in the webinar folder here. Okay, mesh emitter, okay. We have a couple other cool things in this project here as well, which I'll kind of deconstruct for you here. Now they're fairly simple. I haven't really added much to them, so I'm just gonna show them to you. And for lack of time here, because I know you guys have a lot of questions about specific particle effects probably. So for time consideration here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of show you which ones I used, and then we're gonna get to the Q&A since we're kind of at the 10-minute mark of the webinar here, or 10-minute left mark of the webinar. This one also has like some really cool lighting as well, by the way. And this is the project that you will get. All right, so what we've used in this project, I'll kind of just deconstruct it for you here. That's the one that we just used. Okay, so this one right here, this is the burning flame, which you can find, which I just showed you in the library 40 under weapons and explosions. This burning flame. You can apply it to any mesh. Okay, so you can apply it to any mesh and it'll create a nice low-key, kind of just like low-key flame just like this. Let's make our light gizmo invisible there. It's annoying. Okay, so it'll just appear just like this. Okay, so if you have like, burning wreckage or something like that, it's a very useful particle effect to have for that. All right, and let's play back more. And then I have an explosion here. So the explosion is really cool. It shoots off debris and smoke and meteor type stuff. Like, holy cow, it went pretty far. Okay, all right. So there's the explosion right there. Maybe someone shooting an RPG at this Humvee and misses the Humvee and hits the old rusty car over here. That one is the blast. Okay, under weapons explosion, that one's the blast right here. There's a lot of parameters that you can modify there, but I didn't really modify anything, so I just kind of wanted to show you that. The reason it only occurs at that point is from frame 1, I have the emit to off. Okay, let's go to our particles here and show you. Okay, so our blast is right here. So at the beginning, emit is off. Okay, so you can see emit off right here. If I scrub through the timeline, emit on right there, and that's where the explosion happens. Okay, and there we go. And there's also torch fire and smoke. Okay, so torch fire and smoke, pretty self-explanatory. I just tweaked a couple of parameters or attributes over here and made the torch fire a lot more wild. Okay, so it's fairly fierce torch fire. And I combined the torch fire. The torch fire has its own smoke, but I kind of enhanced that further with some other smoke as well, as you can see right there. Okay, so there's the torch fire smoke is fairly light, but the smoke is fairly thick. And there's also some fog along the ground. Okay, so I've just kind of, just to kind of give it more of a dusty kind of military feel. We have that fog coming along the ground like this. Okay, so you can see right there. Okay, it's just going to add some ambiance to our scene. Okay, and the fog ground can be found in the content tab. Where is it here? It's not, this one's in the learning samples, I believe, under applications. There's a lot of stuff to keep track of. Texture emitter, I believe, is where it is. Yeah. Okay, so there should be a fog somewhere down here, fog ground and fog space. So there's a couple of different options here for you. All right. The texture emitter, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with the texture emitter if you're creative enough. Thankfully, our team of engineers is very creative, and they've come up with some really cool options for us here. Tetris and welding sparks and everything like that. Okay, so yeah, we're 5 minutes left in the webinar. We'll do the Q&A for as long as it takes to answer all the questions. So I'm going to get to the questions right now. I'm going to open up the control panel here and load up our questions panel. All right, we got a bunch already, it looks like. Cool. Okay, so Roberto asked a question. I'm using PopcornFX GUIs handy, but I wonder why once the blend mode is selected, the list of particle mode selection does not shrink accordingly. It should be reduced to show only the ones that are effectively usable. I think that's a great tip, Roberto. What Roberto is talking about here is, the option the particle section I showed you earlier. It's not on this one actually. Okay, so you can see, in the particle section, if you're not using any of these, remember I showed you earlier, you can choose between additive. Maybe there's a different one that has that. The mesh emitter should have it. Yeah, so any of the stuff that you're not using here, which one's the texture emitter here? Texture emitter. A lot of these are custom, created in PopcornFX, so they won't have the typical power tool stuff or super tools stuff. I'm just going to load in the super tool one really quick to show you an example here. Okay, so the texture emitter. So what Roberto is mentioning here is once you select a certain blend mode, so say we choose additive, then maybe we should just take out alpha blend and all this other stuff as well. Since we're only using additive, maybe it's a little less confusing for people to take out all these other options. And I think that's a great suggestion, Roberto. I'll pass that on to our engineering team there. Okay, so Frank asks Y axis versus Z axis up to import from PopcornFX editor. Now, honestly, I don't have a lot of experience with the PopcornFX editor myself. I have had a crash course on it. Before we launched this plugin, I really didn't know anything about it. I'd never used it before. But I'm not sure. I can't really answer that question, Frank. Maybe you can email me later, and I can ask the team of engineers that have more information on that. Frank is asking, when you import PopcornFX, then which axis is up, Y versus Z axis? Since when we import in from stuff like Maya or other programs, sometimes the Y and Z axis, which one is up in the 3D world, is different depending on which application you're using. Okay, so sorry for that, Frank. You can email me kai@reallusion.com. That's kai@reallusion.com, and I'll be able to probably get some more answers for you there, some more detailed answers from our engineers. Okay, so Roberto asks, would it be possible to enable the visualization of the particle emitting area? I know that PopcornFX suggests to fill it with particles in order to see it, but it's not very handy. Displaying it like in the legacy particle system would be way better. Enable the visualization of the particle emitting area. Oh, so maybe you're thinking about like a wireframe around the particle emitting area, Roberto. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that for me. I'm not really sure if that's what you're talking about, but yeah, maybe elaborate for me a little bit on that. I'm trying to kind of figure out what it is. So sorry about that, Roberto. Just maybe clarify a little bit later on in the questions here, and I'll get that to you. Okay, so Subdiacon asks, what is the status of cooperation with Curve Editor? So yeah, we mentioned in a previous webinar that we're going to be allowing PopcornFX to be modified using the curve editor. That is currently under production. I can't really give you an ETA on that at the moment. I believe they're looking for Q2, which is the second quarter of the year, to get that incorporated, because that is one of the priorities at the moment, is so that we're able to use the curve editor with the PopcornFX plugin. Opens up a whole new world of possibilities for customizing your popcorn effects. So I can't really give you a solid answer on that one. Q2 possibly, but again, take my prediction with a grain of salt. So next question there is there a way to produce parameters in the popcorn editor that can be tweaked in the modify tab of iClone? Yeah, again, I don't really know too much about the PopcornFX editor itself, but I do believe that when you create the parameters in PopcornFX, a lot of them will appear in iClone. Now, we will have tutorials later on how to customize that, and at that point, I'll be learning about that before obviously I do the tutorials. But at this point, I mean, the engineers have had the most experience with the PopcornFX editor, so I would have to ask them. And again, I would refer you to the email route. Email me, and I can forward your question to them for more of a technical response. But at this point, I believe, since we do have, if you look at the library 40, there is like basically all the stuff in the library 40. They have their own custom parameters, and I believe that you shouldn't have a problem. Logically, that would make sense, but I can't really give you a confirmed answer there. Okay, so next question: how can I export PopcornFX plugin or PopcornFX from the timeline in iClone? Can I use Alembic, baked PopcornFX, and game engines? At this time, you can't use Alembic. Alembic is used for physics, like physics hair and stuff like that at the moment. So we can't export the PopcornFX from iClone to another program at the moment, unfortunately. But that is something that we can probably consider in the near future. I have been asked that before, exporting the PopcornFX and iClone via Alembic format. What I would suggest is maybe just, exporting them directly from the PopcornFX editor, using those parameters, excuse me, and exporting them into your desired program. And another question, the next question you had was, why do I need and what have I to buy the use? What do I need and what have I to buy to use effects design in iClone and in Unity 3D? So I think you're talking about the PopcornFX that we sell, the PopcornFX Library 40. Can you use those in Unity 3D? Is there any discount for iClone popcorn owners? That's a very interesting question, and I think that's probably something that we will. So Diakon asks, can I use my iClone PopcornFX in Unity 3D or Unreal or whatever? Now, that is a very interesting question, because I believe that is something that we probably want to make happen. At this time, I don't see that we can export those into Unity, because when we export from iClone, when we save our PopcornFX in iClone, rather, we save them as special iClone PopcornFX files. Okay, we don't excuse me, we don't save them as regular PopcornFX files. So at this point, we can't export our iClone PopcornFX into another program. But that is something that's very interesting for future reference. I'm going to actually write that down, because we could probably have people selling PopcornFX in the marketplace in the content store, which would be really cool. PopcornFX. Okay. Yeah, and I'll forward that suggestion to you guys. And also, any suggestions that you have for what we can do with PopcornFX. We basically just released it last month in December, end of December actually. So it's barely been out a month. So we do have a lot of time that we need to improve certain aspects of it, like you mentioned, the export. And also, I think it would be a really cool idea to be able to publish your own PopcornFX. Now, there might be some some kind of intellectual property conflict with that, we'd have to make an agreement with the PopcornFX team to be able to sell their stuff in our marketplace or whatnot. But again, that's all technicalities which will be figured out later. But yeah, at this point, to answer your question simply, no option to export to Unity 3D, unfortunately. Okay, Hakan asks, can we make a realistic splash and wave effect when the ball falls down into water? Yeah, probably. I've never tried it, to be honest, but there is a splash. We're underwater here. There is a splash effect, I believe. Is it in nature? Yeah, there's a flick water effect here. Now this one I don't really know how to use that well. There's also a water hose one. We can probably bring this flick water one in and see what it looks like. I've actually never used this flick water one, so there's just too much stuff to use here. Okay, so there you go. So flick some water up like that. You can probably enhance this. Let's take a look at what we're dealing with here. So here you want to make sure your lifetime, it's currently set at 2. It almost seems like it's more like a fountain rather than a flick of water. Yeah, I may have to. Okay, so what I would probably do is, have this below the water secretly, this below the water, and then kind of bring it up like that, really quickly. You can use a transform key for your dummy, and make the water splash like that, and probably have a bit more water size, water opacity. Maybe you can. Okay. What I would do initially is I'd probably just have it like this, like splash like that. Okay. Although that is a good question, I don't really have an answer for you there. I haven't really attempted to do that. Maybe with the applications, it would be a texture emitter. There's bubble. I'm not sure if there's a splash, anything like that. There's underwater bubble, but that obviously doesn't solve your problem there. Yeah, so you know what? I can probably try and, when we're not on everybody's time here, I can probably try and figure out a way to do that using a different effect. And you can probably just email me about that, and we can exchange information on what we both discovered is the best way to do it. And I can ask the guys who are a lot more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am. This one's a sprout of water, so whoops. This one we can probably change the lifetime. This one is a texture emitter, so there's a lifetime down here. Oh, we're emitting so many, that's why. And the speed needs to go down. And yeah, so you can get something like this, I guess. Yeah, we want to spread this out, obviously, a lot more. Okay, so that's kind of a splash. Again, okay, yeah, we need to spend a lot of time experimenting with different ribbons and different texture emitters to be able to do that. Unfortunately, I won't be able to get into too much detail at this point. So maybe just email me later, Hakan, and I can spend my own time kind of just trying to figure it out for you there. Okay, so Roberto clarified his earlier question, the container, the area where the particles are emitted. Yeah, that would be a good option, Roberto. You mentioned earlier which one was it here? Oh, yeah, the visualization of the particle emitting area. So we don't currently have that with the PopcornFX, but I'm sure that we can probably incorporate that into the future. I'll write that down as well for a future suggestion, because I'm going to forward a lot of these suggestions to our engineering team. And if you guys have any suggestions as well, you're more than welcome to send them to me via email, and I can pass them on to our development team. We're always looking for ways to improve our products. So yeah, okay, area, okay. So Adele asks, is it possible to simulate a realistic waterfall in liquids? Yeah, Adele, that's probably one of the easiest things to do, is simulate a realistic waterfall. The spout I just showed you earlier, I mean, you can just change the direction of this under the texture emitter. We can even probably just use a super tool to do that, but if you use a texture emitter one down here, that spout I just showed you, you can just change the direction of it. So if we had, whoops, let's delete that. I'd probably use this one for the waterfall. And if I had more time, we can, customize, because basically what you do is you start from scratch with a lot of these super tools, and then you just, kind of work your way up to the values that you want. Let's have some water coming over this building here. Maybe pretend this is a water main at the top, and it busted, and there's water coming down. So all you want to do is just, okay, so it's spouting upwards. You can actually rotate, use the E hotkey to rotate your emitter. Okay, just like this. Doesn't look too good at the moment. There we go. Oh, it's because it was a physics object. I'd probably do something like this. And change our initial speed probably, because the initial speed needs to go way down. All right, and you probably want to change the direction your camera is facing as well. And you can probably change the emit volume of this as well. So on the maybe Y, I would change it to like 20 or 50. Okay, so you have a bit more water coming down there. And yeah, initial speed, randomness, and some values down here, which you can probably work with as well. You can use exposure bloom on this, I believe. What are you using here? Alpha blend unlit, 32. Yeah, so that'll create kind of like a reflection on the water there as well. Exposure bloom. I didn't have a chance to get to the text stuff in this case, but okay, there's what I would probably use for a waterfall, and you probably want to change your align mode maybe to face cam or something like that. Nope, that didn't work. No, this one you definitely want velocity. All right. There you go. At least you can see the distortion. Well, you probably want to refine the emit rate and everything like that, but that's a whole new bucket of worms. That's a waterfall for you. Okay, that's my just beginner attempt at a waterfall. All right, let's go to the next question here. So hopefully that helped you a little bit. That's what I would use anyways. William asks, might we see more tutorials on Curve Editor from your good self? Actually, Chris, who is stuck on 3D, Chris Morris, he's doing all the Curve Editor tutorials. I may be doing a webinar. I think he's actually doing a webinar in the near future on the Curve Editor. We already did one, so we might be doing another one really soon. But yeah, Chris is the animation kind of expert. I'm pretty good at character animation myself, but a lot of the Curve Editor stuff is his realm. So he's doing a lot of those tutorials. But I can answer any questions you might have on the Curve Editor. But he's definitely been using it for a lot longer than I have. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question there, William. Chris is a really good experienced animator as well. So, okay, so Gerd asks, will there be a get well soon? Thanks, Gerd. Will there be a possibility to add motion blur to the effects? Yeah, so this is something that I've been pushing for personally, because I'm a huge user of Unreal Engine. And so I love the motion blur myself. and Maya has it as well. And I think that, yeah, motion blur is something that I've been pushing for a long time, and I think they'll probably incorporate that in the near future, hopefully, because motion blur is the bomb. I love motion blur. But unfortunately, I can't tell you a solid time on that, because in the development process, things are always changing and other things are taking priority and whatnot. Okay, so Jeffrey mentions here, FYI, attributes created in the PopcornFX editor will show up in iClone as parameters that can be adjusted. So thanks for that, Jeffrey. That's kind of what I assumed logically. So if you create an attribute in the PopcornFX editor, Jeffrey mentions here, they'll show up in iClone as parameters that can be adjusted. And that's kind of what I assumed. I just never gone through the process myself, since a lot of the PopcornFX library 40 items have their own custom attributes or parameters. I always use those words interchangeably. So thanks for that, Jeffrey. Thanks for clarifying that for me and everyone. So Roberto asks, I think is called emitter volume in the legacy particles. Oh, right. So Roberto clarified earlier in the legacy particles. Yeah, so this legacy folder here is the all the old school PopcornFX particles that we've had, atmosphere and stuff. Over the years, we've accumulated a significant library of all this stuff. Okay, and then we have there's a section called emitter volume. Now, emitter volume, Roberto, with a regular PopcornFX can be found. If I go to smoke, for example, here at the top, looks like this one doesn't have it. Let's try and find something that does. I know the texture emitter will have it. All right, so if you have a texture emitter, there's an emitter settings, emit volume. Okay, so this is very similar to that. However, it only has a cube shape. If you want to emit in the shape of a mesh or something like that, then you have to use the option down here. Or where is it? Yeah, so the default mesh, use a mesh sampler. Okay, so if you want to emit your particles in any shape except for a cube in terms of volume, you can use a mesh sampler right here. And that's what I accidentally did earlier. Okay, so Malcolm asks, can you attach the bullets to the truck to shoot on the move? Yeah, definitely. It's super easy to do that. Malcolm, attach the bullets to the truck. Where is our truck here? Where'd you go? Oh, here we are. All you got to do is select your object, which in this case is the, what is it called? Firearm right here. And go over here to the attributes tab and attach to, pick parent, and pick the whatever. Okay, so now it's part of this turret. So whenever the turret moves, if I move the Humvee, then the bullet will, or the emitter will move along with it. Okay, so I can move it closer. I left the wheels behind. Oh no. All right, so you can see the bullets are coming from there. And our waterfall is flowing down there as well. All right, so pretty easy to attach stuff. Just a simple attach. All right, so thanks for that question there, Malcolm. Next question here. So Frank asks, smoke ring to water. Not sure what smoke ring to water means. We do have a smoke ring particle effect here for sure. I believe that's in the texture emitter. Is it in here? Yeah, smoke ring. So I'm not sure what you mean to water. So maybe this you can use a smoke ring at the base of your water to create the effect of, like, bubbling water. I would assume that's maybe what you're meaning there. So you can probably add that onto the bottom of your waterfall there. So it's just like a smoke ring like this, and you can probably adjust the volume of this. Yeah, it seems like the emit volume here is kind of strange. Volume's already low. Probably because we're using force and physics down here, I would imagine. Nope. It's always a fun mystery to figure out what is affecting what in the scene here. Interesting. Okay. As you can see, I haven't had time to go through all of these effects, but we will be launching some videos really soon that have basically all the relevant attributes for each particle emitter that you can modify. Okay, so we'll have the smoke ring in there included. We have a bunch of those. I don't know if the smoke ring is in there, but we have them hidden right now. They're not published yet. But let's see. Nope, I don't see the smoke ring in there. We're about to launch these pretty soon. Smoke burst. So it looks like with the smoke burst, that's not the smoke ring, no, it's different. Yeah, it's just showing how you can customize them. Yeah, so I mean, again, if you have questions about any of these that I don't know yet, I haven't experimented with the smoke ring. I know the smoke burst, but not the smoke ring. Then yeah, give me an email and I'll try and figure it out. We can figure it out together. But I just don't want to, waste time dilly-dallying during the webinar trying to figure it out haphazardly by myself here. So yeah, just feel free to email me, guys, and I'll be able to get that for you. Okay, I think we're done for the questions. Looks like we're all done. And again, if you guys have any further questions, you can always feel free to email me. I'm always here to help. Kai@reallusion.com, KAI@reallusion.com. Again, apologies. I'm also still new to PopcornFX myself, so I'm kind of struggling like the rest of you. But hopefully, we'll have some new developments in PopcornFX, including the curve editor and various other things that we'll add to it later on. Export capability as well, which is something that I'm personally hopeful for. But don't forget to fill out the survey for the webinar and send that back into us, and we'll send you off the $10 gift certificate. And email me if you're in need of the templates. And again, we'll be sending out the templates that I showed you earlier. We have the text emitter templates. I didn't have time to get to the text emitter, but the text emitter is fairly simple stuff. If you have any questions about it, again, feel free to email me. It's one of the more simple options, and we already have a tutorial out there for the text emitter as well. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I just kind of wanted to show you, mainly explain the basics that I found confusing when I first started PopcornFX, which were the emitter settings and the particle section and particle mode and all that stuff. That's personally what I found confusing at first, so that's what I kind of wanted to focus on. And then we moved on to, I find it cool how to see how you can incorporate different effects into your scene. And I have a couple other projects set up, like how you can shoot fireballs. A magician can shoot fireballs and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And various other things that I've personally experimented with. But yeah, I won't waste any more of your time. So thanks so much for attending, everyone. And hopefully you learned a lot. And good evening, bonsoir to you people in the European Union over there. And we'll have another round of this webinar in a few hours for our American friends here. And so I'll sign off there. And hopefully see you guys on the forums or on YouTube channels, or on YouTube channel rather, and everything else. So all right, talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for attending again.